Way too long. Way too long. It took way longer than it should have. Alright. So, the thing I wanted to talk about. This is not a Windows 7 game, but I'm running it on my Windows 7 PC. So I wanted to kind of briefly tell a story, if you will, about how I got this running and how I got my gamepad, how I got this thing set up. Because it was really convoluted and I still might need to make some changes. Getting the game to run was kind of simple-ish. When you install it normally through the CDs, it installs and it runs fine, but it has graphical issues, and that's a really common issue that people have with it. It's like things look kind of red and blue and weird, and everything looks kind of glitched out. And there's some tips about, you know, running a batch file that closes Explorer.exe before the game starts, and then the game starts without graphical issues and runs fine, and then once you close it launches the Explorer.exe again. For some reason that didn't work for me, so I was like, okay, I need to find a different solution, and long story short, there's a program called DXWind, or DXWND, which is a program that I used in the past to force older games to run in a window when they would normally only run in a full screen. I used it for Rayman 2 ages ago, so I tried it with this, and it got it to run in a window, which is nice, which is what I wanted, but it also fixed the graphical issues, so it runs perfectly fine. That's that out of the way. I wanted to play with a gamepad, right? And it supports a gamepad, or at least it says it does, but it kinda does. You can't really... Like, what originally was the case was the joystick would work, and the confirm and cancel buttons would work. Like, A and B would work fine. And then the button that I would normally use for the inventory was mapped to the main menu, which is really weird. So already there are two issues now. One of the default keys... One of the default commands, I guess, in the game is mapped to the wrong key on the gamepad by default. Secondly, a bunch of the other keys just they're not mapped. So, like, to use an item isn't mapped, to open up the inventory isn't mapped, to open up the equipment screen isn't mapped. So initially I thought to myself, okay, I'll just download a program that'll map keyboard keys to the joystick, or to the gamepad. So there's a program called Joy2Key. This is the first program out of 4 that I need to run at the same time, by the way, in order to get this game to work properly. Let's see if I can actually overlay... well, I'll overlay it in a sec. I'll overlay it at the end, but... There are 4 programs I need to run to get the gamepad to work properly, and I'll explain why. The first one, the Joy2Key, that maps keyboard keys to the joystick. Oh, to the gamepad, I guess. So that's fine, I mapped all the keys the way I wanted them to, but there was one issue. The game internally registers the mapped key press as a separate action from the actual pressing of the gamepad button. So the button that I wanted to remap was gamepad button 4. And gamepad button 4, within the game, has its own mapping. It maps to the main menu. And then I also separately mapped it to the inventory screen. So it crashed the game because it tried to open the 2 things at once. So I was like, okay, that doesn't work, so I need to figure out a way to remap buttons on the joystick. I need to remap button 8 and button 4. I need to swap them around and everything else will be fine. And the way I ended up figuring out how to do that is crazy. I downloaded another program called VJoy, which is a program that creates a virtual joystick that... It's basically, you put in settings like, oh, I want to create a virtual joystick that has this many buttons, this many axes, this many triggers, whatever. You just set up all that, and you press apply, and it tells the computer that's plugged in. It doesn't actually, you can't use it for anything, it just tells the computer, it's like pretending that it's plugged into the computer, I guess is the best way to describe it. So there's a fake joystick plugged in as well, so it's thinking that there's my real one's plugged in, and this virtual one that I created a profile for is plugged in. I can't do anything with that on its own, but that's essential for the next step. So that's 2 programs now. We've got Joy2Key and VJoy. Third program, which I need for later, I needed to find a program that would tell me what the physical IDs of the devices plugged into my computer were. Or the IDs internally that the computer has. Because whenever you plug in like a USB stick or a joystick or whatever, it registers it as device 8 or device 4 or something. And I needed to know for this next final program what the ID of my joystick and the virtual one was. So after like an hour of searching, I found some obscure forum post where some dude uploaded directly to the forum this program called Joystick ID Swapper. It's like an old version of it, I think, and it works fine, but that took so long to find, that one program. And then the next part as well. So I've got that, I know what the IDs are. Now I have to download the final thing called, the fourth program, called Universal Joystick Remapper. And that's what I need. I can't actually change the mappings of the buttons around. What Joystick Remapper does, essentially, is it can map inputs from the physical joystick to the virtual one that I just created a profile for. So you go through and set up all the settings so that you have like this mirrored virtual gamepad that has all the regular gamepad buttons mapped, except I swapped those two buttons that I needed to swap around. Then after I did that, I could go through, and there was another issue. It didn't register the D-pad, so I needed to create two profiles in the joystick, in the joy to key settings. One where it would have the D-pad be registered on the physical joystick to map to the arrow keys on the keyboard, and then the second profile that would have all the other virtual joystick buttons mapped to the keyboard keys that wouldn't interfere with the game. And that's where I am now. There is one error that's occurring though. The only issue I'm still having is when I press the main menu, it always like cancels itself really fast for some reason. And I don't know why. I think maybe the start button is mapped to something that it's not meant to be mapped to. I'm just gonna swap it with like one of the triggers or something, and then hopefully it'll be fine. Anyway, I'll try pull up something. Add image. I'll show you a picture of what this looks like. This insane setup. Where did I put it? It should be in here somewhere. Here we go. Okay, let me resize this so you can see this monstrosity. Fit to screen. Have a look at this. This is nightmare. This is insane. Look at all that stuff. I need those four running at the same time so I can use my joystick or my gamepad with this freaking old game. Anyway, that's pretty much it for the stream. Thank you to everybody who stuck around to this point. I'm glad to have finished. Is one complete? It was a journey and a half. Did it crash? Did it just crash? What happened? What happened? Okay. Anyway, whatever. I think the game crashed. Yeah, it better have saved.